I've been a firefighter for 9 years. Engine 14, Station 6, south side of the city. Before that, I was in the Army for 4 years, which is where I learned that I don't panic. Some people freeze up when things go bad. Some people run. I just go flat inside and do whatever needs doing. It's not bravery. It's more like a switch that flips and all the feeling drains out, and you're just a machine that moves through the problem. The Army liked that about me. The fire department liked it even more. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that I am not a person who scares easy. I've been inside buildings that were minutes from collapse. I've pulled people out of cars that were wrapped around telephone poles. I've carried bodies that didn't look like bodies anymore. None of that made me lose sleep. You do the job. You go home. You eat dinner. You watch your kids do homework. You go to bed. That's how it works. What happened in April broke that. Broke all of it. The call came in on a Tuesday night. Residential structure fire, single-family home, fully involved on arrival. That means the whole thing was lit up by the time we got there. Flames coming out of every window, roof already sagging. The neighborhood was one of those older blocks near the rail yard. Small houses, close together, the kind that go up fast because they're all wood frame with no insulation to speak of. We pulled up and my Captain Reyes started giving assignments. I was on the nozzle with my partner Tomas. Standard interior attack. We'd go through the front, try to knock down the fire in the main hallway, search for occupants. Dispatch said the neighbors reported a family of 3 living there. Mother, father, 1 kid. Nobody had come out. The heat hit us at the door. Even through the gear, through the hood and the mask and the helmet, you feel it. Your skin tightens. The air in your SCBA tastes different, metallic. Even though it's coming from a tank, your body knows it's walking into something wrong. We made it into the front hallway, and the conditions were bad. Visibility 0. The smoke was black, down to the floor. No thermal layering at all. Tomas was on my left, holding the line behind me. I was sweeping with my free hand along the wall, moving low, trying to find doors. The noise was enormous. People think fire is quiet, or that it crackles. A fully involved structure fire sounds like a freight train mixed with a waterfall. It roars. The whole house was roaring. I found the first bedroom about 15 feet in on the right. Door was open. I went in and swept the floor. Firefighters search low because that's where survivors are, down where there's still air. The bed was on fire. The walls were on fire. The ceiling was bowing down toward me and shedding pieces of burning drywall. I found a body on the floor next to the bed. Adult, female, face down. I rolled her to check for breathing, and her skin came apart under my gloves. Not peeled. Separated, the way wet paper separates when you pull it. The layers just slid off the muscle underneath. Her face was unrecognizable. The features had melted into each other. Nose flattened, lips fused, eyelids sealed shut by heat. The hair was gone, replaced by a blackened crust that covered her scalp like tar. The smell was something you never forget. Not like cooking meat, the way people always say. Worse. Sweeter. A thick, cloying sweetness that gets into your mask and stays in your nose for days. Her hands were locked in front of her chest, fingers curled inward, contracted by the heat. They call it the pugilistic posture. The muscles shrink and pull the limbs into a fighting stance. She wasn't fighting. She was already dead when the fire did that to her. At least I hope she was. I moved on. Second bedroom was across the hall. This was the kids' room. I could tell from the size of the bed frame, the shapes of melted toys on the floor, and in the far corner, sitting on the floor with their back against the wall, was the child. I need to be specific about what I saw because it matters. The room was fully on fire. The ceiling was gone. I could see through to the attic, which was an open cave of flame. The walls were burning. The carpet was burning. The bed frame was a skeleton of glowing metal. The temperature in that room was somewhere north of 1,000 degrees. At that temperature, everything organic combusts. Wood, plastic, fabric, skin, everything. The child was sitting there like they were waiting for a bus. No burns, no smoke damage on the clothes, no singed hair. A kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing a dark t-shirt and pajama pants, sitting with their knees drawn up, looking right at me. The fire was all around them. I mean literally surrounding them, flames on every surface. And this kid didn't have a mark, not a blister, not a red patch, nothing. The clothes weren't even warm when I picked them up. I didn't think about it in the moment. You don't think in a fire, you react. I grabbed the kid, tucked them against my chest, and moved. Thomas was calling for me over the radio, and I could hear Reyes outside yelling about the roof. I made it back through the hallway with the kid in my arms. The ceiling came down about 4 seconds after I cleared the front door. The whole structure pancaked into itself and threw a column of embers 50 feet in the air. I carried the kid to the ambulance, laid them down on the stretcher. The paramedics started their assessment, and I stood there catching my breath and watching, and that's when the kid looked at me and spoke. "You shouldn't have done that." Not crying, not scared, not grateful. Just a flat, calm statement, like telling someone they parked in the wrong spot. The kid's eyes were on mine, and there was nothing in them that looked like a child. Nothing frightened, nothing confused. Just steady and old and completely sure of what they were saying. I said something like, "You're safe now, buddy. You're okay." The standard thing you say. The kid didn't respond, just kept looking at me. The paramedics were checking vitals, and one of them said something about the readings being strange. I didn't catch all of it. Something about the kid's temperature being off. Then they loaded the stretcher into the rig and drove away. And that was it. We spent the next 3 hours on overhaul, pulling apart what was left of the house, making sure nothing was still smoldering in the debris. They found the father's body in the kitchen, or what they thought was the kitchen. The fire had consumed most of the structural indicators. Both parents dead. I went back to the station, showered, ate half a sandwich, went to sleep in the bunk room. Didn't think about the kid or what the kid said or the impossible fact that a child had been sitting in a 1,000-degree room without a burn. I filed it away the way you file away all the things that don't make sense on this job. Every firefighter has a story that doesn't add up. You don't dwell on them. I should have dwelled on this one. The station fire was 11 days later. We'd just come back from a medical call. A woman in cardiac arrest at a nursing home didn't make it, and everyone was in the kitchen. Reyes was cooking, which he did most nights. Tomas and Jim and Daniels were at the table. I was leaning against the counter drinking coffee. Normal night. 6 guys in a firehouse kitchen doing what 6 guys in a firehouse kitchen do. The smoke detector went off. We all looked at each other with that expression you get when you're a firefighter and your own smoke detector goes off. Half embarrassed, half annoyed. Reyes checked the stove. Nothing burning. Jim went to look at the detector, and then he stopped in the doorway and said, "There's smoke in the apparatus bay." There was smoke in the apparatus bay. A lot of it. Thick, dark, chemical-smelling smoke, rolling across the ceiling in a layer that was dropping fast. This wasn't a grease fire or a wiring problem. This was the kind of smoke you see at a working structure fire, and it was inside our station. Everything happened fast after that. The bay doors wouldn't open. The motors were dead. The manual overrides jammed. The smoke got heavy. We couldn't find the source. There was no visible fire, just smoke, piling up, getting blacker and hotter. Thomas went for the side door, and it was stuck. Not locked. Stuck, like the frame had warped. Jim hit it with his shoulder, and it didn't move. The fire showed itself all at once, not building up, not spreading from a point of origin the way fires normally do. It was just suddenly everywhere. The walls, the ceiling, the apparatus, the bunker gear hanging on the racks. 1 second we were in a smoky room. The next second we were in an oven. I've been fighting fires for 9 years, and I have never seen ignition happen like that. Everything caught at the same time, like the whole building had been soaked in accelerant, and someone dropped a match. We went through a window. Reyes, Thomas, Jim, and me. Daniels was behind me. I could hear him. I could feel him. And then I couldn't. The window was a standard double hung, maybe 3 feet wide. And we went through it one at a time, rolling out onto the concrete apron outside. I turned back to pull Daniels through, and the window frame was on fire, and the wall was on fire, and through the smoke, I could see Daniels on the floor, and he wasn't moving. Murphy, the other guy on shift. I haven't mentioned him because he was in the bathroom when it started. They found him later in what was left of the hallway. The fire investigator said it looked like the hallway had reached flashover conditions in under 30 seconds, which he described as unprecedented in a concrete block building with no significant fuel load. Daniels didn't make it either. Burns over 80% of his body. I visited him at the burn unit before he died, and I wish I hadn't. His skin was gone from the neck down. Not burned, gone. Replaced by this wet, raw surface that didn't look like a human body anymore. It looked like something turned inside out. The nurses had him on a wireframe bed because he couldn't have sheets touching him. Couldn't have anything touching the exposed tissue. His fingers had fused together on both hands, the skin melting and hardening between them like wax. He was conscious for parts of it. That's the thing nobody talks about with burn victims. A lot of them are awake. They feel it. Daniels was awake, and he was looking at the ceiling, and he was making sounds that I still hear when I'm trying to fall asleep. Not screaming. Past screaming. A low, continuous moan that didn't sound voluntary, like his body was making it without his permission. He died at the hospital 2 days later. I was told the immediate cause was sepsis. His body couldn't fight infection without skin to keep things out. He rotted from the outside in. 2 guys dead. Our station, our house, the place where we slept and ate and stored our gear and spent more time than we spent with our families, burned to the ground. The investigators spent weeks on it. They found nothing. No accelerant, no electrical fault, no gas leak, no explanation. The report said, undetermined origin, which is investigator language for, we have no idea. I went to Daniel's funeral, and I sat in the pew, and I stared at the casket, and I thought about the kid in the burning house. You shouldn't have done that. I thought about it for the first time since that night. Really thought about it. And I felt something cold move through my chest. Not grief, not guilt. Something else. Recognition, maybe. The beginning of understanding something I didn't want to understand. But I pushed it down. Because coincidences exist. Because buildings catch fire for reasons that investigators can't always determine. Because I am a rational person who does a rational job, and the idea that pulling a kid out of a house fire could somehow cause my fire station to burn down is insane. I know it's insane. I told myself it was insane, and I believed it. For about 8 more days. I was in a grocery store on a Saturday morning. Cereal aisle. My wife Lisa had given me a list, and I was working through it the way I always do, methodically, one aisle at a time. The store was busy. Weekend morning, families with carts, a guy restocking shelves, an old woman taking forever to pick between 2 brands of crackers. I smelled smoke. Not the faint could-be-anything kind. Real smoke. Structural smoke. The kind with weight and heat behind it. I looked around and nobody else seemed to notice. The guy stocking shelves was still stocking. The old woman was still comparing crackers. But I could smell it, and it was getting stronger. And I dropped the cereal and walked toward the front of the store. The fire started in the back, near the loading dock. By the time anyone besides me knew what was happening, it had spread through the storage area and into the main floor. Grocery stores burn fast. All that packaging, all that cardboard, all those aerosol cans and cooking oils and cleaning products. The sprinkler system kicked on, but it was like spitting on a bonfire. I got people out. That's what I do. It's reflex. It's muscle memory. It doesn't require thought. I pointed people toward the exits and carried a kid who'd been separated from their mother and went back in twice for people who were trapped in the back aisles where the smoke was worst. The fire department showed up and did their job, and eventually it was over. 6 people died. 3 of them in the back of the store where the fire had moved too fast for anyone to reach them. 1 was the shelf stalker, a young guy, early 20s. I'd walked right past him in the cereal aisle not 5 minutes before. 1 was an employee in the break room who never even saw the fire coming. 1 was a customer in the pharmacy section who apparently didn't hear the alarms, or heard them and didn't move fast enough. An older man. His wife was outside in the parking lot screaming his name while the roof caved in. The other 3 were near the back exit. The door was there, right there, 15 feet from where they died. 1 of them had made it to within arm's reach of the push bar. I know this because I saw the body. I saw all the bodies. That's the thing about being the guy who goes back in. You see what the fire leaves behind. You see the positions people die in, the way their bodies contort. The man near the push bar had his hand extended, fingers stretched toward the door, and the heat had shrunk the tendons in his arm so tight that the hand was locked in place like a claw. His clothes had burned into his skin. Melted synthetic fabric doesn't just burn off. It liquefies and bonds with the flesh underneath, becomes part of the body. His back was exposed where his shirt had disintegrated, and the skin had split open in long, deep cracks, the way mud cracks in a drought. And I could see layers underneath that you should never see on a living person. The woman next to him was worse. She'd fallen face first, and the fire had worked on her from above. Her hair was gone, and her scalp had contracted and pulled back from her forehead, exposing bone. White bone, almost clean, framed by a ring of charred tissue. She looked like she was still trying to crawl. Her knees were bent, one arm forward, frozen mid-reach. 15 feet from the cereal aisle where I was standing with a box of Cheerios in my hand, smelling smoke that nobody else could smell. I sat on the curb outside the store with a blanket around my shoulders, and I watched the building burn, and I knew. Not suspected, not wondered, not considered the possibility. I knew. The fire was because of me. The station was because of me. The kid in the house had told me, and I hadn't listened because listening would have meant accepting something that my brain couldn't process. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my truck in the parking lot of a park near our house, and I tried to think clearly. The facts, as I understood them, were these. I had pulled a child out of a fire. The child was not burned. The child told me I shouldn't have done that. Since then, 2 buildings I'd been inside had caught fire, killing a total of 8 people. The fires had no explained cause. They started suddenly, burned unnaturally fast, and I survived both of them without injury. I looked at my arms. Not a mark. I'd been inside a fire station that burned to the ground, and inside a grocery store that went up like a Roman candle. Nothing. Not a singe, not a scar, not a sunburn. I called the hospital where they'd taken the kid from the house fire. I gave them the date and the address and asked about the child. The woman on the phone looked it up and told me that no child had been admitted from that address on that date. I told her that was wrong, that I personally handed the kid to the paramedics, that they put the kid in the ambulance and drove to this hospital. She checked again. No record. I called the fire department and asked about the incident report. The report listed 2 fatalities, both parents. Under occupants, it listed 2 adults and 1 child. Under the child's status, it said, not located. Not located. I carried that kid out of the house. I put them on a stretcher. I watched the ambulance drive away. And according to every official record, the child was never found. I went home. Lisa could tell something was wrong. She's been married to a firefighter long enough to know what the after effects of a bad call look like. So she gave me space. Made dinner, kept the kids, Jake, 9, and Emma, 6, on their normal routine. Didn't push me to talk about it. She's good like that. Better than I deserve, probably. I lay in bed that night and I listened to the house. Every creak, every tick of the heating system, every gust of wind against the windows. I was waiting, listening for the sound of fire finding its way into the walls, waiting for the smoke. Nothing happened that night, or the next night, or the next. I started to relax a little. I went back to work. We were operating out of a temporary station, sharing space with Engine 7 across town. I did my shifts. I responded to calls. I functioned. Then my apartment building burned. We don't live in an apartment. Lisa and I have a house. But I'd been covering a shift for a guy at Station 9, and after the shift I stopped at my buddy Ray's apartment to return a drill I'd borrowed. I was there for maybe 20 minutes. We stood in his kitchen and talked about nothing, and I drank a beer, and then I left. I was in the parking lot, about to get in my truck, when I saw the smoke coming from the 3rd floor. Ray's floor. Ray's apartment. The building went up in minutes. 4 stories, wood frame, built in the 70s, no sprinklers on the upper floors. I ran back in because Ray was still in there, and because that's what I do. I got to the 3rd floor and the hallway was a tunnel of flame. I found Ray's door and it was hot to the touch. Not warm, not uncomfortable. Hot enough that a normal person would have pulled their hand back. I didn't feel it. I kicked the door in and the apartment was fully involved and Ray was on the kitchen floor where I'd been standing 10 minutes ago. He was alive. Barely. I grabbed him and dragged him to the stairwell, and the stairwell was on fire too, but I went down anyway, 3 flights, carrying Ray over my shoulder, and the fire was all around us, and it didn't touch me. I could feel it. The heat, the pressure, the way fire pushes at you with physical force. But it didn't burn me. It moved around me like water around a rock. Ray died at the hospital. 3rd-degree burns over 70% of his body. I saw him before they put him under. His face was intact. The fire had spared that somehow, which almost made it worse, because he looked like Ray from the chin up and looked like something from a medical textbook from the chin down. His chest and arms were raw, the skin hanging off in sheets where it hadn't been burned away entirely. Where it had been burned away, the tissue underneath was white and wet and didn't bleed, because 3rd-degree burns go deep enough to destroy the blood vessels. He couldn't feel my hand when I held his. The nerves were gone. He could still talk, though. He asked me what happened. He asked me why he couldn't feel his hands. He asked me if his apartment was okay. I told him everything was going to be fine, and he believed me because we were friends. And friends don't lie to you when you're lying in a burn ward with your body falling apart. He was in a medically induced coma for 2 days before his organs shut down. His kidneys went first. The proteins from his destroyed muscle tissue clogged them like sludge. 11 people died in that building fire. 4 of them were children. The youngest was 14 months old. I went to the funerals. I went to all of them. I stood in the back and I watched the caskets and the crying families and I counted. Daniels, Murphy, 6 at the grocery store, 11 in the apartment building, 19 people dead because of fires that started in buildings I was in. 19 people. I stopped going to work. I told Ray as I was taking personal time, and he didn't argue because he could see I was falling apart. Lisa was scared. Not of me. For me. She thought it was PTSD. She thought the station fire and losing Daniels and Murphy had broken something, and I needed help. She found a therapist who specialized in first responders and made me an appointment. I didn't go to the appointment. I didn't go anywhere. I sat in our house, and I thought about fire, and I watched my wife and my kids move through the rooms, and I tried to calculate when it would happen here. Not if. When. It was Lisa who finally made me talk. She sat down next to me on the couch one night after the kids were in bed and she said, "Tell me what's happening. Don't protect me. Don't edit. Just tell me." So I told her. All of it. The kid in the fire, untouched. What the kid said. The station fire. The grocery store. Ray's building. The fact that I was there for all of them and never got burned. The hospital having no record of the child. The fire report saying the kid was never found. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. I expected her to tell me I needed help, that I was connecting things that weren't connected, that grief and trauma were distorting my perception. That's what a reasonable person would say. She said, "Don't go back inside any buildings." That's my wife. She didn't argue with me. She didn't tell me I was crazy. She listened to what I said, and she responded to the situation as presented, the same way she'd respond to any other threat. Fix it. Manage it. Keep the family safe. "I don't know if that's enough," I said. "It's a start," she said. So I stopped going inside buildings. For a week I stayed outside. I slept on the back deck in a sleeping bag. I only went into the house to use the bathroom, and I was in and out in under 2 minutes. I did groceries at the farmer's market, which was outdoors. I didn't visit friends. I didn't go to the station. I stayed outside, in the open air, where there was nothing to burn. Nothing burned. A week went by, then 2. No fires, no smoke, no incidents. I started to think maybe Lisa was right, that it was about the buildings, that if I just stayed out of enclosed spaces I could manage this. I was sleeping better, eating better. The constant knot in my chest was loosening. Then I went into the gas station to pay for fuel, because the card reader on the pump was broken. I was inside for maybe 90 seconds. The fire started in the back office. 2 employees died. I was standing at the register when the ceiling tiles started dripping fire like rain. The cashier, a girl who couldn't have been more than 20, was behind the counter, and her polyester uniform caught all at once, the way synthetic fabric does, not burning but melting, shrinking against her skin, and she screamed in a way that I will never be able to unhear. Not a movie scream. A sound that comes from somewhere deeper than the throat, from some animal part of the brain that knows what's happening before the conscious mind catches up. She was slapping at herself, trying to pull the uniform off, but the fabric was already fusing with her skin, and pulling at it just tore everything away together. I vaulted the counter, and I got to her, and I tried to smother the flames with my jacket, but by then the fire had reached her hair and her face, and she was looking at me with eyes that were already clouding over, and her mouth was open, and the skin around her lips was peeling back, and she stopped screaming. The stopping was worse than the screaming. She went quiet and her legs folded, and she went down, and I stood there holding my jacket over a body that had stopped being a person in the 30 seconds it took me to get around a counter. I stopped trying to manage it after that. The buildings weren't the variable. I was the variable. Every enclosed space I entered became a death trap for everyone in it except me. The fire didn't care if I was there for 20 minutes or 90 seconds. It just needed me inside, near people, and then it took them. I had to get away from people. All people. Not just strangers in stores. Everyone. Because if a gas station could go up in 90 seconds with 2 people dead, what would happen in my house, with Lisa and Jake and Emma sleeping in their beds? I found a field. It was about 40 minutes outside the city, off a county road, behind an abandoned farm that had been for sale for years. Open ground, no structures, nothing but grass and dirt and sky for a quarter mile in every direction. I drove out there with a tent and a cooler and some water, and I parked my truck on the road, and I walked out into the middle of that field, and I sat down. I stayed for 3 days. Nobody came. Nothing happened. The grass didn't catch. The tent didn't catch. I sat in that field, and I watched the sky, and I felt the wind, and I was alone, and nothing burned. No smoke, no heat, no impossible ignition. Just a guy sitting in a field, doing nothing, being nothing, threatening nothing. The first day was the hardest. I kept checking my phone. Messages from Lisa, missed calls from Reyes, a text from my mother-in-law asking if everything was okay. I didn't answer any of them. I sat in the grass and watched the sun move across the sky, and I tried to understand what my life had become. 9 years fighting fires, 4 years in the army before that, 13 years of running toward danger, because that's what I was built for. And now I was sitting in an empty field because I was the danger, because proximity to me was a death sentence, because the thing that kills people isn't the fire, it's me. I'm the fuel. The second day, I almost left. I missed my kids with a physical ache, like a muscle cramp in my chest. I picked up my phone and started to dial Lisa, and then I thought about the gas station. 90 seconds. 2 people dead. I put the phone down. The third night I slept badly. I kept dreaming about the house fire, the original one. I kept seeing the kid in the corner of that burning room, sitting with their knees up, calm and patient. In the dream, I didn't pick the kid up. I turned around and walked out, and the house burned down cleanly and completely, and consumed everything it was supposed to consume, and that was the end of it. Nobody else died. No station fire, no grocery store, no apartment building, no gas station. Just one house and one family and a fire that finished what it started. I woke up from that dream, feeling something I can only describe as homesick for a version of events that didn't happen. On the third day, I woke up at dawn and unzipped the tent, and the kid was standing at the edge of the field. Same kid, same dark t-shirt, same pajama pants, same face, standing about 100 yards away, right where the grass met the dirt access road, completely still, looking at me. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat in the tent opening and looked back. The sun was coming up behind the kid, casting a long shadow across the grass toward me. The morning was cool and quiet, and there were birds somewhere, and the whole scene looked normal, peaceful even, except for the child standing alone in the middle of nowhere at dawn, staring at me with those eyes that weren't a child's eyes. I got up and walked toward the kid. I walked slowly, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted time to think about what I was going to say. I'd had 3 days alone in a field to think about it, and I still didn't know what the right question was. I stopped about 10 feet away. The kid was smaller than I remembered, thinner. The t-shirt had a faded logo on it that I couldn't quite read. The pajama pants had a pattern, little rockets or spaceships, something like that. Kid stuff. Normal kid stuff on a thing that was not a normal kid. "What's happening to me?" I said. The kid looked at me. No expression, no movement, just looking. "The fires," I said. "People are dying. Everywhere I go, people are dying. What did you do to me?" The kid's head tilted slightly, not a curious tilt, more like an adjustment, the way a camera adjusts to focus. And then the kid spoke. "It's not the buildings." "Then what is it?" "It's the people near you." I let that settle. The morning was quiet. A truck passed on the county road, half a mile away, and the sound of it faded into nothing. "You took me out," the kid said. "So now it needs someone else." My mouth was dry. My hands were shaking. This is the part I want you to understand. Me, a guy who doesn't panic, who's been in combat and in collapsing buildings and in rooms full of fire, standing in a field on a nice morning with my hands shaking so bad I couldn't have held a cup of coffee. "What does that mean?" I said. What needs someone else? It was done, the kid said. The house was chosen. We were chosen. It was almost finished. And then you came in and took me out. I was doing my job. You were a kid in a fire. I was where I was supposed to be. Your parents were dead. My parents were finished. I was next. It was almost done. I didn't know what it was, and the kid could see that in my face. The kid's expression shifted, not to sympathy, not to impatience, to something like resignation, like explaining calculus to a dog. The fire isn't fire, the kid said. Not the way you think. The fire is how it eats. It's always eating. It picks a place and it picks people and it feeds until it's full and then it moves on. Our house was the place. Our family was the food. It was finishing with me when you came in. And you weren't burning because I was already inside it. You can't burn what's already been consumed. I was gone. The thing sitting in that corner wearing my body wasn't me anymore. It was what's left after the fire takes everything that matters. The husk. The wrapper. I thought about the paramedics, the strange vitals, the hospital having no record, the fire report saying the child was never found. Because the child hadn't been found. What I pulled out of that house wasn't the child. It was something else wearing the child's shape. When you pulled me out, the kid continued, you interrupted it. It wasn't done. It was still hungry. So now it's following you, trying to finish. But it can't eat you. You're not what it wants. You're just the door it came through. You walked into that house and you picked me up and you carried me out. And when you crossed the threshold, you brought it with you. It's attached to you now. Wherever you go, it goes. And it's hungry. And since it can't have me, it takes whoever's closest. Daniels, Murphy, the 6 in the grocery store, the 11 in the apartment building, including 4 children, the cashier at the gas station, Ray. How do I stop it? I said. You can't stop it. There has to be a way. There isn't. It needs to finish feeding. It was almost done when you interrupted. It needs a certain amount, and it won't stop until it gets it. A certain amount of what? The kid looked at me and didn't answer that question directly. Instead, the kid said, Go home. I can't go home. If I go home, it'll burn my house with my family in it. It's going to get what it needs no matter what you do. You can sit in this field forever and it'll wait. It's patient. Eventually you'll leave. You'll go to a store or a gas station, or you'll walk past someone on the road, and people will die. Strangers. 1 at a time or 10 at a time. However it happens. It doesn't care. It just eats. So what are you telling me? The kid was quiet for a few seconds. The wind moved the grass between us. The sun was higher now, warm on my face. I'm telling you that the fire was supposed to take 3 people. My mother, my father, me. It got 2. It still needs 1 more. But since you interrupted, it's been trying to finish with whatever's available. And whatever's available isn't right. Isn't what it chose. So it keeps burning and burning and taking and never getting full. You could let it go on like that forever. Stranger after stranger. Building after building. Or you could give it what it actually wants. What does it actually want? Something given, not taken. Someone who walks into it willingly, the way my parents did, the way I was about to. Someone who sits still and lets it finish. I stood there in that field, and I looked at this thing wearing a dead child's face, and I understood what it was asking me. "Go home," the kid said again. Then the kid was gone. Not walked away, not faded, just gone. The way something is gone when you look away and look back, and the space where it was is just empty grass and morning light. I stood in the field for a long time, an hour, maybe more. I watched the sun climb and I listened to the birds, and I thought about Lisa and Jake and Emma and the 19 people who had already died because I did my job on a Tuesday night. 19 people. Then I thought about the stranger at the next gas station, the family in the next apartment building, the next firefighter who shows up to a fire at a place where I happen to be. I thought about the accumulation, 20, 30, 50, 100. I thought about it never stopping. An endless parade of fires and funerals and investigators shaking their heads and writing undetermined on reports while I walk away from every one of them without a scratch. I drove home. Lisa was in the kitchen when I walked in. She looked at me and she knew something was different. Not worse, different. She knew me well enough to see it. "You're back," she said. "Yeah. Did something happen out there?" "Kind of." She waited. She's always been good at waiting. "I need to tell you something," I said. "And it's going to sound crazy, and I need you to just hear me out." I told her what the kid said. All of it. The fire that eats, the interrupted feeding, the attachment, the hunger that won't stop until it gets what it wants. I told her about the choice. Keep going, keep burning, keep killing strangers forever, or stop it. Lisa sat at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold, and she listened to everything. And when I was done, she said, "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I have to stay." "Stay where?" "Here. Home. With you and the kids." "And what happens when you stay?" I didn't answer that. I didn't have to. She was looking at me and I was looking at her, and we both knew what I was saying. "No," she said. "Lisa." "No, absolutely not. We leave. We pack the car and we go somewhere and we figure this out. There are people who, priests or, I don't know, someone. We figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. It's not going to stop. I've been sitting in an empty field for 3 days, and the only thing that happened is nothing. It's waiting for me. It'll wait forever. And every time I go near anyone, they die. Then we stay away from people. We go somewhere remote. A cabin. I don't know. Canada. Somewhere with no one around. And then what? We live in the woods for the rest of our lives. The kids never go to school, never see their friends. And what about the next time I have to go into town for supplies? The next person I walk past? She was crying, not sobbing. Lisa doesn't sob. Her eyes were wet and her jaw was tight, and she was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen on her before. Not fear, not sadness. Something like fury, but pointed at the wrong target. "You don't get to decide this for us," she said. "I know. You don't get to just sit here and..." I know I don't. Then don't. but I could see it in her face, underneath the fury and the grief and the refusal. She could add up numbers same as me. 19 dead. A week in a field changed nothing. 90 seconds in a gas station killed 2 people. The math was simple, and the math was brutal, and no amount of love or anger was going to change what the math said. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Lisa, and I listened to her breathe, and I stared at the ceiling, and I waited. Nothing happened. The house was quiet. The kids were asleep down the hall. The furnace kicked on and off. Normal sounds. A normal house on a normal night. In the morning, I made breakfast. Eggs and toast for the kids. Coffee for Lisa. Jake talked about a science project he was doing at school. Something about magnets. Emma showed me a picture she'd drawn. A house with a sun and a tree and 4 stick figures holding hands. I put it on the fridge with a magnet from Jake's project, and Emma laughed and Jake said, "Hey, that's mine." And I said, "You've got plenty." Lisa watched me from across the kitchen. She knew what I was doing. She knew I was memorizing it. All of it. The sound of Jake's voice when he gets excited about something. The way Emma holds her crayon in her fist instead of her fingers. The way Lisa's hair falls across her face when she leans over the counter. The way the morning light comes through the kitchen window and makes everything look gold. I drove the kids to school. I walked them to the door, and I hugged them both. And Jake squirmed because he's 9, and 9-year-olds don't like being hugged in front of their friends. Emma hugged me back hard and said, "Bye, Daddy." And I said, "Bye, baby." And I watched them go inside, and I sat in the truck in the parking lot for 10 minutes before I could drive. When I got home, Lisa was sitting on the porch. She didn't say anything. I sat down next to her. We sat there for a long time, not talking, watching the street, watching the neighbors go about their morning. Mrs. Chen walking her dog. The UPS truck making a delivery 2 houses down. A kid riding a bike on the sidewalk. Normal people doing normal things in a normal world that had a hole in it shaped like my family. I called my mother, Lisa said eventually. She's going to take the kids for a while. I told her we needed some time. Lisa, don't tell me to go with them. Don't tell me to leave you here alone. It's not safe for you to be here. I'm not leaving you. Lisa, please. I said I'm not leaving you. I looked at her. She looked back. 9 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, a life built brick by brick by brick. She was not leaving. Okay, I said. Her mother came that afternoon. Lisa's mom, Diane, a woman who has never liked me much but loves her grandchildren with a ferocity that borders on religious. She pulled up in her Buick and the kids came out with their backpacks, and Lisa knelt down and told them they were going to stay with Grandma for a few days, like an adventure. Jake looked suspicious. Emma was excited. They got in the car, and Lisa stood in the driveway and watched them drive away. And I stood in the doorway and watched Lisa. When the car was gone, she came back inside. She closed the door. She locked it. She looked at me. "Now what?" she said. "Now we wait." We sat in the living room, not on opposite ends of the couch, close, the way we used to sit when we were dating, when sitting close was still a choice you made because you wanted to, not because you were trying to hold on to something. She leaned into me. I put my arm around her. The television was off. The house was quiet. We talked. Not about the fire or the kid or any of it. We talked about the first time we met. At a bar near the base. A place with sticky floors and bad music. She was there with friends, and I was there with guys from my unit, and I saw her across the room, and I went over and said something stupid, and she laughed, and that was it. 11 years ago. We talked about Jake being born, how he came 3 weeks early and scared the hell out of us. We talked about Emma, who was the easiest baby in the world, who slept through the night at 6 weeks and rarely cried and seemed to arrive already content with everything. We talked about the house, how we'd bought it as a fixer-upper, and how I'd redone the kitchen floor myself and gotten the tile spacing wrong, and Lisa never let me forget it. How the back deck needed restaining, how the upstairs bathroom leaked and I kept saying I'd fix it and never did. Small things. The small, ordinary, unremarkable things that make up a life. The things you don't think about until you're sitting on a couch knowing that your time with them is running out. Around 6 in the evening, Lisa made dinner. Pasta. Nothing special. We ate at the kitchen table and drank wine, which we almost never do on a weekday. She told me about a show she'd been watching. Some drama about a family running a hotel. I told her about a guy at the station who accidentally wore his wife's underwear to a shift and didn't realize until he was changing for a call. She laughed. I made her laugh. I want to remember that. We washed the dishes together, standing side by side at the sink, the way we've done 1,000 times. She washed, I dried. The rhythm of it. The simple, stupid rhythm of washing dishes with someone you love. Then we went back to the living room. Sat down on the couch. She leaned into me again. I put my arm around her. I smelled the smoke at about 8:30. Faint at first. So faint that I wasn't sure. I've been smelling smoke everywhere for weeks. Phantom smells. Stress reactions, the kind of thing a therapist would have a word for. But this was different. This was real. I could taste it in the back of my throat. That acrid chemical edge that means something structural is burning. I looked at the wall across from us. The wallpaper, a pattern Lisa had picked out when we moved in, little blue flowers on a cream background, was changing color. Darkening. Not from the edges, not from a point of origin. Just darkening. Everywhere. All at once. The way paper darkens when you hold it near a flame but not quite in it. Browning. Curling at the seams. Lisa saw it too. I felt her body go rigid against mine. She sat up, looked at the wall, looked at me. It's starting, she said. I nodded. She looked at the door. I could see her calculating. How far? How fast? Whether we could make it. She was thinking like a person who still believed in escape. Don't, I said. She looked at me and her eyes were wide and her face was pale and she was scared, genuinely scared, in a way I'd never seen Lisa scared before. And then something in her expression changed, hardened, resolved. She settled back into the couch. She took my hand. The wallpaper was curling now. Brown waves rolling across the cream surface, the little blue flowers disappearing under a tide of heat. The ceiling above us was starting to discolor. I could hear it. Not the roar of a working fire. Not yet. A low sound. A hum. Like something waking up. I pulled Lisa closer. She pressed her face into my shoulder. I could feel her breathing, fast, shallow, but steady, controlled. my wife, controlling her breathing while the walls caught fire around her. The smoke thickened. It came from everywhere. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, rolling in like fog, filling the room from the top down. The lights flickered. The air got hot. Not unbearable, not yet, but hot in a way that felt intentional, like the house was adjusting, calibrating, finding the right temperature. I thought about Jake's science project. I thought about Emma's drawing on the fridge. I thought about the tile spacing in the kitchen, and the leaking bathroom, and the deck I never restained. I thought about Lisa at the bar 11 years ago, laughing at something stupid I said, and how in that moment I knew, just knew, the way you know some things without evidence or reason. The wallpaper caught. Real flame now, not just heat. Actual fire, orange and yellow, climbing the wall in front of us, spreading across the ceiling, racing along the baseboard. The couch cushion under my arm was starting to smoke. The carpet was darkening. The air was getting hard to breathe. Lisa's hand tightened on mine. I held my family close. The fire was all around us now, and it was hungry, and it was finishing what I'd interrupted in a burning house on a Tuesday night. Then, from somewhere very close, not inside the room, not outside, not from any direction I could point to, a child's voice. Thank you. 2 words. Quiet, flat, calm. The same voice from the stretcher, from the field. The voice of something that had been waiting for this, that had always been waiting for this, that was finally getting what it needed. The ceiling came down.